Hey folks, this is Riker with a video on upcoming action RPG Last Epoch. Now this is the, I believe, third video that we've made on Last Epoch. In our first video, which if you haven't seen, I encourage you to check that out. This was before the game went to Kickstarter, or it was actually during the Kickstarter campaign. And it was an introduction to what Last Epoch will be. In short, it's an action RPG along the same lines of a Diablo or a Grim Dawn or a Path of Exile, and its unique twist is time travel from a thematic standpoint, in that it's a world that you get to experience throughout different periods of the world's history and kind of get to revisit the same locations, see how they've changed over time. Now again, for a full breakdown on the game, I encourage you to check out my first video. In my second video, that was not too long ago, during this summer of 2018. It was after they had introduced the necromancer class. This was after they successfully kickstarted the game, and they were going further along in development. So they implemented the necromancer class, and so we presented what was a build at the time. Obviously everything is very subject to change. It was still pre-alpha at the time is how they classified it, but we were definitely having fun with the necromancer. Necromancer is always a fun class, especially when you get to play a summoner necromancer, and we had a pretty fun summoner build going there. However, just this week, Last Epoch's alpha properly released, available to backers of a certain pledge level. So what we're showing here is the alpha build. And right away, you're probably noticing that it looks quite different from the pre-alpha, and we'll get to that in a little bit here, but there's a lot that's changed. Let's start by going over the classes. There's some things that are the same and some things that are different. So, the class system in Last Epoch. Basically, you start by selecting a base class. There are 5 available, being the Mage, the Primalist, the Acolyte, the Rogue, and the Knight. Then, as you level up, you gain mastery classes, is what the game calls them. In D&D, you might know them as prestige classes, for instance. So, once you've leveled up to a certain degree, you gain the choice to go into one of 3 classes, 3 mastery classes per base class. So, effectively, there are in total 15 classes to pick from. So if you start off as a mage, your 3 mastery classes are the Rune Master, the Spellblade, and the Sorcerer. What I'm running right here is going to eventually become a Spellblade. I picked a mage with the intent of going Spellblade, so the skills that I'll be picking will be more Spellblade oriented. I'm going to be progressing along the skill tree that's going to guide me towards the Spellblade. Then the Primalist has the Shaman, the Beastmaster, and the Druid as mastery classes. The Acolyte can go into the Necromancer, the Lich, which we got to try out, and the Warlock. And currently in the alpha build, I believe every base class has 2 mastery classes available. There will eventually be the 3. Right here, for instance, we're seeing the passive tree come up and showing off the Sorcerer and the Spellblade classes. The Rune Master has not yet been implemented. For the Rogue, there's the Blade Dancer, the Marksman, and the Falconer. And then for the Knight, you have the Void Knight, the Paladin, and the Sentinel. And another thing you might have noticed right there was that they revamped the passive grid. So, there are active skills in this game, and then there are passives. And the passive system previously was a grid with 2 axes, and you would put points along one of the 4 corners of the axes, and that would start to create an area on this passive grid that would start to surround nodes. And once you've built up an area to encapsulate a node, you then had that node available to you. It was a system that in my review of the demo during the Kickstarter, I took slight issue with it in that while it was an innovative system, it was a little counterintuitive, wasn't the easiest to deal with, and it wasn't necessarily visually appealing or visually, again, intuitive. And that's something that the devs made a decision throughout development And they acknowledged that, yeah, the system wasn't super intuitive and there were a number of other issues as well. And so they've completely scrapped that system and converted it into the system you saw before, where you now have passive points that you gain at every time you level up, and you have your 3 mastery. Here we go. Right here, it's the passive system. You have your 3 branches for your 3 mastery classes, and you can kind of mix and match as you're investing points. The more points you invest into any given of the 3 trees, you are building up to higher tiers, to higher nodes. And these, I guess, abilities that you can put points into, they're all very interesting. They all confer different buffs. And once you've invested, say, 5 skill points into a given node, you'll unlock a skill. So you gain new skills by investing points into one of the 3 mastery trees. And then you eventually reach a point, once you've invested enough points into a single tree, where you're now locked into that tree, and you've unlocked access to the higher mastery nodes. And that's when you've become that mastery class. I think it's 25 points to become the mastery class. At that point, you can no longer invest points into the other 2 trees, but you gain access to the best abilities within your given tree. So you can still mix and match as long as you do it before you unlock your mastery class. So if you want to be blending the 3 skill trees, you can do so as you're starting off, but you'll have to pre-plan because you know that at some point you're going to be locked in and you'll be that mastery class. I like this system a lot better. I think this is a fantastic change, and it's kind of a yo dog, I heard you liked skill trees, so we're putting more skill trees into your skill trees. Because one thing that I really lauded this game for is the active skill system. It is probably my favorite active skill system in any action RPG I've played yet. And it's because I feel that it captures the best of both worlds with regards to Diablo 3's skill runes and Diablo 2's classic skill tree system. So what you'd seen before was, so there's a number of things happening. As you level up, every time you level, you unlock a passive point. But then just by using your skills, you, I guess, gain experience into leveling up your individual skills. And you start off only able to select 1 skill. As you can see here, I have 4 locked slots, but 1 free slot. And I've put in my Fire Shield as the skill that I'm choosing to be able to level up. As your character level increases, you unlock additional slots and can then level up additional skills. You can still use the base version of the skills, but you cannot level them up until you've unlocked those additional specialization slots. So, as you saw from the skill tree there, right here, as you're leveling up your skill, you gain points, and you can invest those points along a skill tree that has runes that changes the way the skill works in meaningful ways, and that's what I really love. As well as runes that are a little bit more of just kind of like, well, buff the damage here, or buff the duration, or lessen the mana cost, but I really like this system. So what they kind of did was take something similar to that, incorporate it into the passive system. And by the way, this area right here, absolutely gorgeous. We gotta get to talking about all the visuals here, but I guess it's slightly less important stuff. But just to kind of wrap up on the passive grid, even though I wasn't a huge fan of the passive system, I definitely applaud the devs for coming up with it. Because I feel that something that is really important in action RPGs these days is innovation. And I like that they had the courage to try out something new. This grid system, I would rather someone come up with 100 new ideas and 90 of them be terrible than someone just always play it safe. Because if you're gonna make a game that just plays it safe, and you never try to experiment, you never try to do something new and different, well, your game won't end up being memorable. So, even though that the passive system was a failed experiment, I'm glad that they were willing to try it out. And that they responded to feedback. They saw that, well, a lot of people seem to not be fond of this. Okay, we're going to come up with something better. So I think it's a great sign about the development of this game. It's I think the devs here have been showing a lot of promise in being developers that are tuned into their community. They're responding to feedback, and they're developing so fast. It's remarkable. So again, this is what you're seeing right now is the alpha. The last time we looked at this game was pre-alpha, and it feels like it couldn't have been that long ago. They're developing this so quickly. I feel that so much progress has been made over such a short period of time. Look at the way the game looks now. The visuals is something that people were criticizing during pre-alpha, and the devs were like, don't worry, we're working on improving those. And one of the devs kind of mentioned how like people didn't believe them when they said that they would make it look better. And yet here we are. And it's astounding the changes that they've made to the lighting and the shaders. I really like how they've improved the visuals of this game. And that's not even, you know, to say the level design itself. Like, look at this. Look at these areas here with the bookshelves and the scrolls. I think the game is really starting to look really nice. Not to say it looked bad before, but it definitely didn't feel like it was there. And they're not even done polishing the visuals either. But I'm really impressed by the improvements that have been made to this game visually over such a short period of time. I didn't think it was possible. So really, hats off to the devs for that. Now, what we're going through right here is a level we haven't seen before. So basically, all of the pre-alpha stuff is no longer available level-wise. I don't know if it's scrapped forever or just saved and it's going to be recycled for later parts of the game. But what you can play now, currently, in the alpha, is the entirety of Chapter 1. And what does Chapter 1 mean? So, Diablo, Path of Exile, traditional action RPGs have established the whole Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, etc. system. A chapter is meant to be shorter than an act. So, I think in total we'll be playing for about 50 minutes, roughly. And, you know, that's accounting for time spent, you know, with downtime. Actually, we're also probably in the arena at the end, so it's maybe about 40 minutes, let's say, of gameplay to get through Chapter 1. And the class that I'm building up here is, again, a Spellblade, which is a very different playstyle for me. I haven't run something like this yet in Last Epoch. I've had the most success with summoner builds, which are very strong. I've done the necromancer, I've done the beastmaster. This is the first, I guess it's not the absolute first time I'm doing a melee class. I think I did the Void Knight, but I really wanted to go with, okay, I'm gonna make a melee mage. So that's the idea that I'm running with here. So I'm sword and board. I've got my fire shield, so that's giving me a defensive buff, but also what it's meant to do is if I get attacked and I take a certain amount of damage, the fire shield retaliates. And I'm trying to spec towards nodes within the fire shield skill that is also going to do additional damage. So basically I want to kind of turn on a fire aura around me through the fire shield. So enemies that are near me are just going to start taking damage. I'm pretty sure that's something, I don't have it yet, but I believe it's something that you can eventually get with the right nodes and enough nodes. Currently, as my main attack, I'm using that Elemental Nova. So, it took the idea of Frost Nova, for instance, and it's like, why not all the elements? Frost, lightning, and fire, all at once. So it's a pretty cool Nova idea. I'll eventually be switching off that once I get to kind of a better skill. Or at least something that I felt was more in line with what I needed to fulfill the Spellblade fantasy. This other skill that I'm using right now is more of my single target attack, and it's a knockback, so I'm using it as crowd control and single target damage. You're going to see my build change throughout the gameplay here. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water real quick. Now, if I have one criticism to make about the visuals, it's just that in places it can still be a little overly dark. But I think at the time of this recording this was not yet implemented, but I believe it is now implemented. The ability to kind of like set a gamma slider to just sort of brighten things up. And I think really that's all that's needed, effectively. So good on them for being quick on that. In fact, so they released alpha, and then they've released 2 patches since then. Possibly one within less than 24 hours since releasing the alpha. I bet by the time this video goes live, they'll have another patch as well. So right now I'm looking at Mana Strike. Mana Strike is now going to become my... I guess you can say it's my main Spellblade ability. This is going to be what I use to regain mana. That's sort of the main purpose of it. It does lightning damage. I kind of wanted to go for a fire build, so I'm sort of debating, do I really want to go with this? You know, it's fire. Or it's lightning, rather, and not fire. But I was just kind of realizing, well, I need something to regenerate my mana at some point. Also, the waypoints. Holy crap, guys. I love what they did to the waypoints. They look so cool now. They're reminiscent slightly, at least in my mind, to Stargates. The way they sort of spin with the chevrons on them. It's a very, very loose association, but I think they just improved it so much. So apart from doing the changes to the lighting and the shaders, they've also improved textures, even some models. I noticed in playing a different character that the skeleton models have changed. They've been improved since pre-alpha. Another slight criticism that I have is, in Chapter 1, most of the enemies you're fighting are these umbral or void creatures, so they tend to look very samey. They have different models and they behave differently, which is great. It definitely feels different to fight the different models, but because of the nature of what they are, these creatures from the void, or I'm not super keen on what the lore is, they look very samey, and I guess because they're also dark, and dark on dark, it's a little visually unclear. Especially, there's some that produce this ground effect that you have to dodge out of the way. It's a nice telegraphed attack that you're able to dodge, but sometimes it's a dark attack on dark backgrounds, and it could be a little difficult to see. But one thing I noticed, actually, I first played through Chapter 1 on stream, and then I played through Chapter 1 again to record this, and I could swear, I don't know if this is just perception bias, but I could swear that they actually added, at some point between my 2 playthroughs, they added a greater variety of enemies. Look right here, watch this, The physics on the boxes, it's a tiny thing, but it is just... There's physics on the boxes, like, it's a little attention to detail, you know? Is it gonna make or break the game? Absolutely not, but it's a cute little fun thing. You could destroy the boxes as well. But, yeah, where were we? So, I could swear that on my second playthrough, they added in some other enemies beyond the void enemies in places that they didn't previously have them. I don't see it in the patch notes. That, by the way, was the attack. So the spikes coming out of the ground, it's a little easier to see there, but sometimes you just have, like, kind of the dark pools, and there's a lot going on. There's maybe other flashy effects going on, so it's a little tough to see the ground spikes coming up. But it's not a huge criticism. But I guess it is important to introduce these enemies, simply because they do play a significant part of the lore and the world of Last Epoch. I think it's something that sets it apart from other action RPGs. You know, because you tend to see a lot of the same enemies. Every action RPG, you're going to have zombies, for instance, right? But these void creatures are very unique, I suppose you can say, to Last Epoch. So this is the town hub. The blacksmith is there. Going to be selling off items. I'm not super familiar with building this type of character. I'd learned how to optimize a summoner type of character. So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, what... As a Spellblade, am I trying to maximize, I guess, elemental damage? I have this Humming Bee legendary item that I'd found on my previous playthrough. But I'm mostly going to be now just selling off items to the smith. I don't think we're going to actually get to see too much interesting itemization in this playthrough. The crafting system is pretty cool in this game. We might get to see it a little bit at some point, but I think I just don't get far enough to really dive deep into that. But basically, the way the crafting system works is that you find items called, I think, fracture stones? No, shattering stones. And you can break down an item and effectively extract its magical properties. And then you can take those magical properties and imbue them on a different item. And the fewer magical properties on the item, the more likely you are to succeed in imbuing it. But then the more stats you're stacking on, the more likely you are to fracture your magic item, either damaging it or entirely destroying it. Now, I goofed there. I wasn't paying attention. I think I was distracted and I ended up dying there. But it is also... I'm typically accustomed to playing more ranged builds in general in action RPGs, so playing a melee character is something to get used to, especially in Last Epoch. I haven't done a ton of the melee. But let's see, our current skill setup here. Yeah, so we're still running with... actually, now you can see that I'm using my right click. I forgot what it's called, but no. Okay, so in that case, I'm still using for multiple enemies. I'm using my Elemental Nova. Don't worry, we're gonna get a very cool power, relatively quickly. Well, I don't know how quickly, but we will eventually. I forget at one point we get it, but we're gonna unlock a really cool power. Until then, we're using the Elemental Nova for our area attack. Come on, did we get it yet? There we go, Flame Reeve. That's the one. Holy crap, this is such an awesome power. It unfortunately does not have its skill tree built up yet, but I think every skill will have a skill tree eventually. You can see the skills that have skill trees have the little node icons below the name, whereas Flame Reeve does not. It's currently the only skill here that I have unlocked that does not have it, but to me that is like the quintessential, or at least to this point, it is the quintessential Spellblade power. Look at that. It is so awesome. And it goes so far and spreads out in such a wide cone. It is such a powerful ability. Also, I'm really digging the level design. I can't stress this enough. I love maps that have this degree of depth. This isn't even the best example that we see in Last Epoch, but I liken it to one of my favorite maps, or my favorite map visually in Diablo 3, is Greed's Domain, because as you're traveling along the path, you can see deep down, like there are things in the foreground, things in the background especially, like it doesn't feel like you're in this small dungeon, it feels like you're in this great vast world, and things aren't all on the same plane. You have stuff that seems very far away, you know, below where you are. That's what I mean when I'm talking about depth. Also, guys, pro tip, farm the crap out of this area for super fast levels. Like, you can get a level per clear. So, basically, monsters are coming out of this area. There's great density, great number of monsters. If you can kill them fast enough, what you're gonna do once you've fully cleared them, once the monsters stop spawning, go back to where you came. I don't do that in this playthrough. I did it on stream, though. I farmed a few levels real fast off of it. I don't do it in this playthrough because I just wanted to show you all the content rather than repeat the same content, but it's astounding. Like, it is a really good XP farm. You just gotta go back through the portal that I just walked through, and that's the other reason that makes it so inviting. It's right close to the portal, and it resets the instance when you go back through the portal, so you get everything to spawn again. It's really good. So now you can see I'm using, as my main attack, Flame Reeve, and then I'm using, what is it called again, Mana Strike as my, see here I'm realizing, to great disappointment, Flame Reeve doesn't have its nodes on it. So I'm gonna have to go with my Mana Strike instead, I believe is what I go for. But yeah, Mana Strike is what I use to either regenerate my mana, because Flame Reeve is a mana hog. But also as my single target DPS option. I'm gonna take another sip of water. So right now I'm deciding, okay, where do I want to go with my fire shield here? I could make it last 3 seconds longer, but it's not really a big deal to me to have to recast it. You know, it lasts, I forget how many seconds, it's 11 seconds or something. So, I'm trying to go more for things that do more damage, more effectiveness. I'm debating, do I really want more elemental resistance? I think at its base, yeah, right now I'm checking, how much elemental resist do I get? 100. So another 25 is a 25% boost to the elemental protection. I did die once. I do find myself needing to pop potions. I am taking damage in melee. Do I want to go for a tankier build? Because I really like to build glass cannon. I really like to build glass cannon. So right now I'm just checking along those trees. Okay, is there anything else there that I'll want to build towards that will make me want to extend the duration more? But yeah, in action RPGs, what I tend to do is build as glass as I possibly can, and then only get as much toughness as I really need to not die too much. Because in my mind, dying is not a problem. Like, as long as I'm not playing hardcore, dying is to be expected. Dying is not an issue. I mean, depending on the death penalty in the game, but assuming there's no severe death penalty, if by going full-on glass... So, okay, to me it's all about efficiency, right? Let's say I can clear... Let's say there's X amount of content to clear. And I can clear it in 1 hour, and that includes 5 deaths. Now let's say I can build a tankier build that has 0 deaths. That I build just tanky enough to get 0 deaths. But it takes me an hour and a half to clear, then it's a no-brainer for me. I'm gonna take the 5 deaths. So, if the deaths, the number of deaths, does not increase the duration of time to a point that it's less efficient, I'm not being glib in what I'm explaining here. Okay. Let's use Greater Rift in Diablo 3 as an example, right? When you die in a Greater Rift, the more you die, the more your death counter increments, right? So you have 15 minutes to complete the Greater Rift. If I die a bunch of times, but I'm still able to complete the Greater Rift in time, then that's fine. If I build tankier, and I die less or not at all, but then I can't complete the Greater Rift in time, then I'll always, 100% of the time, take the dying. More deaths, because I'm still being more efficient. I'm still getting more items per hour. I'm still getting more XP per hour. Again, unless there is some kind of system that penalizes you, like if you're losing XP per death, then okay, well, I'm gonna dial it in. But basically, the more forgiving a game is with regards to dying, then the more glass I'm gonna go. Which is why you notice when I play softcore versus hardcore, when I do sometimes play hardcore, people ask me, you know, do you ever play hardcore? When I play hardcore, I play a lot more defensively and a lot more cautiously, and I rarely lose hardcore characters. Whereas I die all the time in softcore. Because in softcore, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me to die. It doesn't matter to me to avoid dying, because even me acting more carefully is wasting time. If I happen to die, it's a 5-second setback, if that. Whereas, if I'm playing more cautiously and altering my build, it's costing me vastly greater quantities of time. But that is a huge digression here. But again, that just to clue you into my mentality of why I build glass. So right here, this is a little, I just picked up a Shattering Stone right there, you can see. Now these enemies here, these Void-fused armor, I'm realizing that my Flame Reave isn't very effective against them. Riker used Flame Reave, it was not very effective. So I'm just, basically taking them out with my Mana Strike, a single target. And I guess as I'm leveling up my Mana Strike and not leveling up my Flame Reave, Mana Strikes can become increasingly inviting as an option. I really wanted to go with a flame attack is the thing. I really wanted to go with a flame dude. I forget if there is a node. I don't think so. If there is a node on Mana Strike to transform it into fire damage. Because sometimes you see that. You'll see, like a fireball, for instance, I'm pretty sure has a node to turn it into something other than a fireball, perhaps an ice ball or something. Which, again, is the reason why I love having these runes or nodes that significantly alter the way a skill behaves. So as you can see here, that enemy's on fire. So I've been basically building up, okay, chance to ignite. Again, I've been trying to focus on fire damage, fire attacks, igniting enemies, increasing my damage over time effects. That is everything that I'm going for. I think, am I going to go back for those boxes? No. Wait, maybe I will. A box toppled. And I'm going to destroy the boxes. There you go. It's just nice little details, you know? I think that's something... So, I mean, you do see physics in Diablo 3, for instance, but I think something you don't see in Diablo 3 and possibly don't see in any other action RPG that I can think of, maybe I just am forgetting or not noticing, is the ability to actively push around the boxes. I don't know. I sometimes it's the simple things that that amuse me to no end, but it's a cute little thing, pushing around the boxes. Summoning void-fused armor and is dead. Well, anyway. Periodically becomes rampant. As you can see, the enemies have different affixes on them. I believe we said this the first time we were talking about the game, but there are definitely differences in the enemies. By which I mean mechanical differences that make you react to the enemies in different ways. Sometimes it doesn't really matter because you can just DPS them down, no problem, but sometimes I do have to change the way I engage the enemy to account for its different mechanics, and because I can't DPS it down fast enough. Right now we're in the armory. Currently there's no overlay map system implemented, or they're starting to implement it, but it's not fully implemented in all areas yet. So like, in the top right you got your typical, you know, your mini-map, but in Diablo 2, in Diablo 3, in Path of Exile, you also have, like, you can press tab or some button to bring up an overlay map or another map that can kind of give you a full picture of the entire area. So without that, you can kind of get lost without being able to find your way. This effer, this guy, those big guys are tough, because they charge at you so quickly. I think that was the first time, and I think, was that a boss fight right there? Maybe not. So we're into the lower district now. Got 2 areas left to go through. And, we got these abyssal crawlers. You can see the fire effect. That means they're ignited, which is always nice. What were we saying about... Oh, I don't remember, but I guess it wasn't altogether that important. As you can see, leveling up the Mana Strike. The lower level the skill, the faster it levels up. So, you know, when I first implemented Mana Strike, bam, it's leveling up a lot faster. So I'm trying to specialize my Mana Strike into okay, this is a little boss here. Well, little boss. I mean, it's not little. It's pretty big. You know, he's got a variety of different attacks there. Again, I like the 3D model. I find the texture, it's a bit of a shame that they all have this same texture on them. I don't know if that's just placeholder or intended to be forever. It feels like it's intended to be forever. It's cool. It's just, I don't know, like, when they all kind of look like that, it just gives them all a very samey look. I'm glad that I feel they've drastically, like, altered the 3D models. Like, especially they have very different silhouettes. That's something very important in game design in general. In my opinion, at least, and I know Blizzard as well very much feels that way. Silhouette. Okay, so now we're getting outside, upstairs. So now we're going to start seeing different enemies. But as you can see, even the outdoor areas, relative to what they looked like previously, so improved visually. Look at that. Just looking really good. But yeah, so silhouettes. Silhouette is important because it helps you, at a quick glance, know what an enemy is, or know what a character is, period, right? Take Overwatch, for example, or it doesn't have to be Overwatch. Even in Diablo 3, like, every class has a drastically different silhouette. The Witch Doctor has that hunched over appearance. Unmistakable. The, It's both in the 3D models and in their animations and posture, the way they stand. It's all very visually distinct, so that even if they have different armor sets on, you can generally pretty easily tell what class it is. You know, the monk has that sort of, that martial arts stance. But yeah, so I feel like that the Last Epoch devs have been paying very close attention, especially with regards to the void monsters, to giving them distinct silhouettes. So it's not that I feel, oh, you cannot visually distinguish between them. It's just that, well, they they just look samey, you know? I don't know. It's really a small criticism. I think they did a great job with the silhouettes. So they clearly, you know, have put attention there. So right here, I'm shattering an item. I want to extract the move speed, and I didn't get it. I wanted the move speed, to put move speed on something else. And now I'm realizing, hey, wait a minute. Where's the move speed? Where'd the move speed go? Oh, I didn't get it. Oh, well. So that's unfortunate. You don't always get all of the affixes extracted, is basically what happens. But, if you hover over an affix that you have extracted, you can see what items it will apply to. Right now we're going back to the Sheltered Wood, and this is a little bug. I'm gonna have to restart the game. So we'll see you in a quick moment once I've restarted the game. In fact, actually, now I remember, you don't have to restart the game, you just have to take the waypoint. Yeah, so you port back to town. It's a bug that happens if you, it happens sometimes when you portal back into the Sheltered Wood. To fix it, you just portal back to town and then take the waypoint. That's exactly what we did right here. Again, the game's in alpha. And for it being an alpha, honestly, there's very few bugs. In my opinion. You know, I've played other alpha games that are in a very sorry state after years of being an alpha. You know, these early release games, right? Like, did you see on Steam and stuff? For instance, 7 Days to Die. It's a game that I enjoy. But it's been in alpha forever, and it's still buggy as hell. And it doesn't look like it's going to get released at any point. But, you know, you can still have fun with the game. I've definitely got my money's worth out of the game. So, that said, I don't believe this is a concern with Last Epoch. Last I checked, they want to release, I believe it was April 2020. 2020. So, solid 2 years of development. And, you know what, again, these guys have been progressing so rapidly that I'm not concerned about them finishing this game and actively releasing it. I do not believe Last Epoch is going to get stuck in development hell. And even if they have to delay it, which I don't think it would be the end of the world, you know. Most games, they end up being delayed, I would argue. But it also wouldn't surprise me if they make their deadline. Now we're going to approach a pretty cool area here. I mean, to be fair, most of the areas we visited are pretty cool, but this is going to be a little noteworthy one here. We're not there quite yet. Starving Merkfoot. Man, we are. They just wanted food, they're just hungry. Man, we're horrible people. When it comes to skills and passives, a tip that someone gave that made a lot of sense. I don't know that it's necessarily the best advice, but in general it seems that getting at least 1 point into a node tends to be really good. So like some of the nodes only allow you to put 1 point into it, be it in the active skills or in the passive skill tree. But the ones that allow you to put more than one node, oftentimes it's good to just get the one. And then, I mean, you could always pump in more, but having one versus having none at all is generally better than having two or having one, if that makes sense. In other words, the advantage of having one skill point in a node over no skill points is more significant than the advantage of having 2 skill points in a node over having 1 skill point. So I think a common strategy is to just put the base number of points. As you can see, so you're seeing Roman numerals, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3. What that means is you need to have put 2 skill points into the previous path before you can unlock getting that next node. So sometimes the game forces you, well, you gotta put 2 points in here if you want to unlock this next path. So I think generally people kind of try to put the minimum required to progress further along the tree to unlock more abilities rather than just improving the existing ones, which makes a lot of sense. Again, the game is still in alpha though, it's still being balanced, so it's difficult to talk about what are optimum strategies. Also, again, currently the game is in alpha. You have chapter 1 to play through, which is, again, maybe 40 to, well, let's say maybe about 50 minutes of gameplay before you get to the arena. And then the arena is just, you fight wave after wave of enemy. You can level up forever. But there isn't like a ton of, I guess, content to experience with regards to progressing through the story. But I think that's fine. Again, given how quickly they've been doing things, I wasn't at all disappointed. I saw someone express that he was kind of disappointed that there wasn't more to experience right now. I think it's fine. I mean, what they have to work out, what is most important to work out, is class and skill balance. Now, this is the area that I was talking about. Look at that. Look at that. The floating paths. This is very interesting. It's a very interesting world. I love the depth. If there's one thing, one tiny touch I would love to see them add to those floating stones, is that, so I understand the ones that you walk on can't move, but imagine if there were just some like extra loose pebbles that were kind of like just hovering up and down slightly in different, just to kind of give it that extra floaty feel to it, right? Like you're walking over something that's floating in air, as opposed to like cemented in magically. I don't know if the cemented in look is what they were going for, but I don't know, I think it would be a nice little touch. Sound off in the comments if you think that would be a nice little touch, to just have like the stones be just ever so slightly floating up and down. Maybe, again, maybe not the ones that you walk on, but some little extra stones, just doing that. I think here we're reaching the surface, and I think this is going to be the end, yeah. So we're going to have a little bit more in the form of the arena. So we're going to show you the arena just to show you the changes, the vast improvement to the arena. But yeah, so once you reach the surface, that's it. That ends chapter 1. But again, they haven't fully fleshed out the story of chapter 1. There will be more to do. So the arena looks so much visually nicer. Look at that. The central area is kind of dark. That's where I was having trouble seeing the spike attacks. But there's actually, I think, a total of 3 different arena levels. So every 5 or 10 or 20 waves, I forget, you get a different arena. It kind of randomly picks a new arena. I think it's every 20 waves, perhaps? I forget exactly. But this is basically what the game is once you finish chapter 1. So you're going to fight off waves and waves and waves of enemies. Every 5 waves, you get a reprieve where you get loot. And you can buy and sell from the blacksmith. Gives you a moment to, you know, take a breath, level up. But I believe this is sufficient to be testing out builds, testing out balance. With the chapter 1, you know, giving you a taste of what the game will be, which I think is most important right now for the current state of the game. I think, you know, once we're further along in, you know, the class design, then maybe, you know, it's just more important to focus on, I guess, getting the rest of the story out there. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how much they want to reveal in the alpha. But yeah, so that's pretty much what it's going to be. What we're going to show for today. So that's the update on Last Epoch. Again, I'm very impressed with the progress that they have made. I think the devs know what they're doing. And again, I think this game continues to show promise. It continues to seem like a game that can be met with success. You know, I can see it being recognized alongside games like, you know, Grim Dawn. Is it going to be a super huge AAA hit? I could see it potentially reaching the popularity of maybe a Diablo 3 Path of Exile. Is it going to become like the new best action RPG ever? That's tough to do. I don't know that it's... So, and this is what I said in my first video. I don't know that it will compete with a new generation of action RPG that is set to release, of which none have released yet, but I can definitely see it competing with the current generation of action RPGs. Yeah, I definitely believe that this game can be a success. And again, if you haven't, I encourage you to check out my first video about this game, as well as a necromancer video if you kind of want to build yourself a necromancer character. And stay tuned for further updates. We'll be following the development of Last Epoch. And we're going to thank you for watching. As a reminder, if you want to get your name on the Rikers Raiders 2017 t-shirt or poster, you only have about a week left to do that. I'll put a link in the video description on how to do that. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can pledge on Patreon, where your support is immensely appreciated, and we've got a variety of backer rewards, including behind-the-scenes stuff, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rikers Raiders for more gaming content.